Hey, gang. Thought that we'd do something that we haven't done for a long time here, basically over a year. It used to be on each of the big number patches for Star Citizen. I'd drop kind of a deep dive, basically going through all of the things that were both in that patch and kind of in the game as a whole, kind of explain what they were, how important they were, or how unimportant they were, and kind of goals for the future that I would see. Um, and in between those, I'd just kind of do shallow dives, just to kind of show what was changing on a week to week basis or get bi-weekly basis, since that's when they update this roadmap. We're not going to get an update on the progress tracker. I think they said until February, which I wouldn't expect, and I'll get to that after the intro here. But I thought that it was high time we go ahead with 318 in the PTU. Let's go ahead and do a deep dive. And I'm going to kind of talk about all the things that kind of just wrapped, all the things they'll be wrapping soon, and all the things they're going to be starting pretty soon. So let's go ahead and get this. So I think that 2023 is going to be a show me year for probably Squadron 42 and the PU, but mostly the PU. And I'm going to kind of get into what I think a show me year is and what I think CIG is going to have to achieve in order to kind of prove it to me. And so what do I mean by that? So I got into this project. So this was the first package I ever got. And actually this kind of surprised me because 2015 is when I remember getting into, but I'll get into that in a second. So I basically paid into the project back the Kickstarter and said, great. And then I went and I played other games because I knew the things that Chris Roberts was promising and the things that the Kickstarter was promising based on the funding, they weren't going to be happening anytime soon. I tried to make this game before, or a game very similar to this one. Obviously didn't have Chris Roberts' experience or any of his even least experienced devs. So, it wasn't a surprise it didn't get off the ground, but I had a good sense of how big this project was going to be, even back in 2013. So I went and I did other stuff. And then around I want to say 2016. No, it must have been 2015, according to this. I decided that it was time to jump into the game and see what it was all about. And the reason that this was a show me year was because this is the year that they moved it from being a hangar module into the actual PU. And so prior to this year, it had always been the entire game was just you walking around your ship in a hangar. You couldn't actually fly it. You could fly Arena Commander, but you were pretty limited in the number of ships you could do there. And you certainly weren't flying things like the Freelancer and the Cutlass and things like that. I think the only ships you were flying in Arena Commander were like the Super Hornet. I want to say they had one or two other fighters, maybe the Saber, but there weren't a lot of options. And so 2015 was kind of my prove it to me year. Like, prove that you can get it out of the hangar, show that you can create a game where you can walk around in first person, walk onto a ship, and fly out into this wider world with no cutscenes, no breaks, seamlessly move into the verse. And they did it. And so at that point I went, okay, well, you guys, you proved it to me. I basically just kind of walked away, played other games until they hit that prove it to me stage. And I've been playing the game ever since. So they proved it to me. 2023 is going to be another prove it to me year. So this is where kind of the pandemic, I won't say it's over, especially having spent the last 2 years working for allergy infectious diseases as an accountant. I'm not doing that job anymore, but pandemic's still going on to a certain extent, but we largely have kind of a cap on it. And hopefully those words don't come back to haunt me. where I'm getting at now is that CIG is coming out of that. They've kind of had enough time to kind of get their shit together, basically. And they should have a really good plan. One of the biggest blockers that I feel for this game was persistent entity streaming and the whole server tech kind of coming together. And they've been trying to get this thing out the door for the last few years, or different versions of it. And now with PES, persistent entity streaming, it looks like they've finally done it. And now that they've done that, they've been telling us for years that that's kind of the big blocker. And we've been guessing for years that that was the big blocker, that the reason that the NPCs are so derpy and the reason that we can only, now we can have up to 100 people per server, which is a big deal. That's a great thing, but this is supposed to be a massively multiplayer game. So you're talking thousands of people. Everybody's playing basically in the same server, in the same universe. And they've said that that's not going to be really possible for a while, so I'm not really holding them to that. But get us to a second star system. Show us that you can build star systems quickly. Show us that now that the server tech is here, show us what you can do with that. Like, show us that the NPCs are going to start acting like they were in that Squadron 42 sort of cutscene that they did with walking, not even cutscene, the sort of vertical slice that they did in the last SeasonCon, where the two NPCs were hunting the people, or hunting the player through the abandoned station. Show us that. We want to see those NPCs. We want to show them flanking and all of that. And sometimes you'll get on a good server and you'll actually see that. And those NPCs become deadly. Like, usually 9 times out of 10, you log in, you do a bunker mission. You can actually run that bunker mission with either a knife or even just your fists. You can run right up to the NPCs, do a takedown move, and they're out. And just do that for the whole bunker, knock out all 10 guys, and you're done. That isn't very good NPCs. They're not thinking right. But 1 time out of 10, you'll get on a server where it'll be like a fresh server. There'll only be 5 people on it or something like that. And all of a sudden, those NPCs become a lot harder to deal with. Like, even dealing with 2 at this once becomes really difficult. Like, you have to really be on your toes and accurate with your shots and using cover and moving, or they will flank in and get you. That's what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for NPCs that aren't combat oriented, that are, just walking around living their daily lives using subsumption. So someone that's working in a store will work in a store, go to the bar after work, and then if you just follow them around, you'll kind of see them go through their daily routine. If you wanted to just sit around and follow an NPC and be a creeper all day, you'd see them go home, go to sleep, wake up, do their job, go and do other things while they're out and about. That's kind of what we're waiting on. We're waiting on this game to take the next step. And 2023 is now the PES is out, and they're going to be iterating on it, and there's going to be growing pains. But this is really the year where it can't be the road to Pyro. They have to make it to Pyro this year. That the excuses are kind of gone. They've kind of lined up all the things in the progress tracker, in their roadmap. It feels like Squadron 42 is getting real close to beta. And I'll touch on that a little bit too. So really, this to me is a show me year. So CIG, I wouldn't call myself a white knight, but I'm kind of forgiving because I understand how arduous this process is, and the fact that no one has made a game like this before. CIG is kind of showing you why. It would take a ton of time and millions of dollars, and a production company would never invest. They'd never say, yeah, we're going to give you $500 million to build a game, release it in 13 years. And no production company is ever going to do that. This game would never get made outside of us funding him to make it. So with that said, we're kind of hitting the point where even people like me are saying, okay, you've gotten it this far. is this going to forever be a game where we're just going to be 100 people playing on a server? And that's going to be the extent. Like, is it going to basically be a multiplayer game, like a big multiplayer game where I'm playing with 100 other people? Or is it going to actually be a massively multiplayer game that was originally promised? Are we going to have NPCs that they're fooling us, not necessarily passing a Turing test, but are kind of going through their daily cycles, the kind of things that Tony Z has talked about year after year after year of this is what the NPCs will do under this system. When are we going to see that? We should start seeing that this year in order to have this be a show me year. We should get to Pyro. Pyro should drop hopefully by the end of the year, and it's looking pretty good. And I'll be honest, it looks like as far as this being a show me year, they might actually do it. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll kind of talk about some things that are coming up soon, things that have wrapped, and things that I think are significant that we haven't really seen yet. But let's go ahead and get to it. And again, this is going to be kind of a slow walk through these. This is a deep dive. If you want to see the shallow dives, tons of them other places on the channel. Just click around, you'll find them. And I just kind of talk about little things that I've noticed that are important. On this one, I'm going to pretty much try to talk not about everything, but about the big ticket items and the things that are coming soon. First one that I wanted to talk about is actually Asiato Station. Not because of what it is. This is the abandoned station that they showed. I believe this is the abandoned one. Yeah. This is the big one that kind of looks like a big satellite dish in space that they showed for Squadron 42. But this is a Squadron 42 asset, and it wrapped in November. As I go down through this list, you'll notice that a lot of the things that are Squadron 42 assets wrapped around November or December. And my theory for the last few months, if you've been following the channel, you know what my theory is. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for watching this. My theory is that this month, December, one of the things that CIG is probably talking about right now is Squadron 42 a go, no go for beta? And beta effectively means feature complete. When I say beta, it basically means feature complete, that they're not going to be adding any more chapters. They're not going to be adding new ships. They're not going to be adding new characters. They're not going to be adding new elements to the story. They feel like they have at least the basic gameplay that they need. So they might not have cutting tier 4 where you can cut little holes in the wall to shoot through them or something like that. But you got cutting tier 1, so you at least have a proof of concept. So that's what I mean. That it doesn't mean that there's not a lot more work to do, just that they're kind of saying, we're good, take what we have, iterate on it. We're going to try to launch in a game like Squadron 42 AAA 2 to 4 years. I would say it's reasonable once they go to beta, 2 to 4 years, and probably on the farther end of that, but in that region. So with that in mind, with Squadron 42, let's go ahead and start going through. So they are going to actually start getting into this pretty soon, starting March of next year. And I believe this one, 14-week sprint. So this is more, you'll sort of see this a lot where a lot of things are ending in June. They're not necessarily ending in June. That's just as far out as they planned in 2022. So they sort of locked down the teams. Let me know what you're going to be doing into June of next year. And this is sort of what they came back with. So in about, I'd say a little over a month, like a month and a couple weeks, all of this will change, and probably half the things I say here, you can pretty much toss out the window, but I'm going to say them anyway. So there. But actor stats too. There's a lot of quality of life things that you don't typically get to in a game until it's on really solid footing, because you don't want to be, let's say that you have a scope for a gun and it works a specific way, and you decide this is the last time we're going to touch scopes, and then 2 years down the line in development, you're like, oh damn, now that we got this new tech, we can do scopes this completely other way, and now you have 500 scopes, and it's kind of like, well, crap, now we have to go back and redo all of those assets. that's kind of where the PU has been at for the last few years, is that they're trying to build the plane while they're flying it. And the problem is that since it's a live game environment, since we're all actually playing this game, that whatever they put out the door now has to work now, even if they know that's going to work differently later, if they're doing something to fix X, Y, or Z. And that's one of the reasons why the BMM was pulled. It's one of the reasons why they're not putting out certain chips that have been on the back burner for years and years and years and years, because the game loops aren't in. That's why they instituted that policy of not building assets before they have a reason to be in the game, just because they want to make sure that they're keeping pace with what they're giving us, and they're giving us something that we can actually use in game, which is nice, but kind of frustrating if you're a person that's been waiting on salvaging for the last 6 years, or science gameplay, engineering, anything else. But Actor Stays too. This kind of tells me that they're reaching that point where they think they really know what they're going to be releasing. The Idris, I just wanted to talk about the Idris briefly. 31-week sprint, no, they were working on the Idris for pretty much the entire duration of the project so far. So we're not going to see anything other than the NPC version of the Idris, which doesn't have an interior, until Squadron 42 releases. They've been very clear about that. So you can pretty much take that one off the list. You might see more Idrises in the verse, and they might tweak how they act. They're certainly going to use us as a test bed of, okay, is this thing too tanky? Is it not tanky enough? They're going to use us as a test bed. That's one of the reasons you see them in Xenothreat and the Arlington Gang missions, is specifically for that reason. Same thing with the Javelin Destroyer. I wouldn't expect to be able to walk around this thing in the verse anytime soon, because it's a Squad 42 asset. Heading on down, aerodynamic control surfaces. There's a lot of these kind of things where they're zeroing in on the flight model, and they really have to do this. I'm really surprised this is just the PU, because it's going to be Squadron 42 also. But they're zeroing in on the flight model, and that's one of those things. This being a show me year, this is a space flight simulator. The way the ships fly is probably the most important thing, and they're just getting to it now, which kind of tells me their priorities have been skewed for a while, because you can have a crap game with a great flight model and people will enjoy it because they're like, wow, that game wasn't very good, but that was a good flight model. Think of something like Independence War. The game, the story wasn't particularly good. It's kind of unique in the way that you could control 4 different stations, basically the bridge. But the flight model was bang on. It was great. But Star Citizen is now kind of switching focus. Now they've got kind of a group of people like Yogi, and I forget who the other guys are. Sorry, gang, if you're watching this, you're doing a great job. But now they're kind of switching focus, kind of zeroing in what they want the flight model to be. And that's a good thing, because that is something they need to figure out this year. So moving on down, a lot of AI things got wrapped this year. And so when I say I want to see NPCs that are acting more realistic, I mean, I actually want to start seeing this sort of stuff, like arcade machine, commuter, dancing, ground vehicles, hawker, illegal goods stealer, janitor, landing improvements. There was a brief window, I think it was a PTU, when we first got Lorville, they had ships actually coming in, landing, and taking off, and it killed the server, so they yanked them. But now that the servers are a little bit more robust, when are we going to see that? When are we going to start seeing NPC ships coming into and out of stations, into and out of landing zones? A long time ago, and I hate to admit that this is my fault. I suggested to CIG after watching Alien one night, I said, why don't you do the whole landing window, like the whole boxes where you have to fly down through the boxes and they land you. And what I meant was sometime in the future, here's an idea where you've got an inner box where you're in the green. Then you have like a yellow box where flight control will be like, hey, you're flying out of the window, move back in, expedite. And then you have the red area where you would get a big fine. And if you stay there, they'd take control of your ship. And one of the precursors to be able to come into a landing zone like that actually needs flight control would be you sign a release that says, giving control over to my ship. So it wouldn't just be you're flying in, all of a sudden your ship just spins out and goes a different direction. You're kind of like, what the hell is going on? No, try turn. And then your ship explodes because you're staying in the armistice zone, or you're staying in the no-fly zone or whatever. So hopefully they bring a version of that back, because once you have AI that are flying around, flying in and out of those zones, it's not going to be 3 players where one of them is taking off, one of them is parked right outside the city, and one of them is kind of flying down at a similar time. It's going to be 50, and you're going to have some type of flight control system. So hopefully we see something like that. But AI and NPCs doing all of these things, I want to see some of these things, because a lot of these wrapped ages ago. I mean, you can see some of these wrapped back in 2021. So when are we going to see these? When are we going to see NPC janitors and NPC hawkers trying to sell us stuff? Because half the time the bartender won't even talk to you now. Not even more than half of the time, like maybe once in 20 times you can get the bartender to actually respond to you. So actually having the bartender maybe give you jobs or tell you rumors or something like that, and that gives you like a mission hook or something like that, as opposed to going into your mobiGlas and looking up the missions. You go and you talk to a bartender or a hawker, and one of the options is, hey, what have you heard? And they're like, oh, I heard there's something 10 miles out of town. If you pay them well, if you have a good rep, if you don't smell, hygiene. So there's a lot of things with NPCs in theory, once the shackles are taken off with the servers, which is what we've been told is one of the main sort of stalling factors for the NPCs being so derpy, and that's kind of been borne out in what we've seen when we get on a fresh server. Hopefully we start seeing some of these things come into effect, and a lot more lifelike NPCs coming into the verse, because that kind of living in that living, breathing world is what a lot of people playing this game are actually looking for. And that'll kind of be a first step towards NPC crews, which will be a huge thing. CR has said in the past that he never wants the NPCs to be better than a player. He never wants people to say, I would rather have an NPC player or an NPC crew member than a human. He always wants the human is always going to be the better option. But some of the only ways you're going to get some of these big ships off the ground, like a Kraken or even a Bam Merchantman, you're going to need some NPC crew, because no player is going to say, hell yeah, I want to be a janitor for the next 10 years in this game. I don't even want to look out a window. I don't want to pull a gun. I don't want to loot a box. I just want to push around a mop in this ship forever. That would be an amazing game experience. That's not going to happen. So, or someone just sitting in a turret. Someone might do it for a one-off. They might do it, occasionally, but you're going to need NPC crews, and those NPC crews are going to actually need to be able to be functional. And at a certain point, once in the past regarding NPCs, they said that they were going to make them so they'd have sort of hidden skills. And so you might hire an NPC who's flat rookie, and it turns out that they're a savant working the turret, or maybe they're a medical genius. You put them in the turret, they suck at the turret, and then one day they save your life on the operating table, and you're like, oh crap, I've had you in the wrong position this whole time. Do this, and then they kind of level up in that thing. They haven't talked about that since, and I think that was about the time that I started actually jumping in and playing the game. So I think 2015, 2016. It's been a couple years. But anyway, NPCs, put a pin in that one. Hopefully that's something we see. A lot of ships are going to be coming in the next year. I think we got 12 this year. I think it'll be 12 when 318 drops the PU and we get the Vulture. We're going to be getting the Apoa Centogiai, which is their fighter. It's kind of the equivalent of the Saber. No, it's not going to be dropping in June. Ship like this will probably be, might even be 2024. Just this is their first real Xi'an ship. They have the Cartual, but that was made a long time ago, and it has its issues. So will they solve those issues with the Centokiai? They might. They better, because it's the Xi'an's premier fighter. So if it can't hold its own in some way, if it doesn't have unique hook, which is probably going to be extreme maneuverability for them, going to be interesting. UI improvements. So the AR map marker and system, that whole system rework with your maps and being able to put a pin in things, or say, go to this exact location on a planet. I think that's what the map marker is. It could be just points of interest on an existing map, but I would hope that we would be able to create our own points of interest. Like, oh man, I found the coolest rock outcropping that you can stand on and look out over this entire valley. Look at this, kind of a thing, to your friends, and then they can all meet you there or whatever. I was thinking that might be a sneaky ad for 318. Doesn't look like it made it in. So it's probably going to be a 319 asset. But you'll see there's a lot of things here that I've opened up that they've completed, but we haven't seen yet. So will we be seeing them in 2023? I don't know, but I thought I'd call attention to them. This is one that I think we're going to be getting sooner rather than later. Arena Commander, Classic Race. We just got a bunch of racetracks in the verse, and it looks like they snuck in racing. So this is one of those that they just kind of flew in under the radar. But basically the racing game loop is in. I think we've got, I want to say 9 tracks are coming in 318. Thought I heard 17 somewhere are planned, but that's racing. I mean, it's going to get bigger. They're going to have tiers. They're going to have rules and stuff like that. But racing game loop, that's a big deal for a lot of people. The Argo SRV, you'll notice the downstream teams aren't involved yet. And this is one that's kind of waiting for other tech. We'll get to it near the end down the T's. Vehicle tractor beams have to come along, and they're not in yet. The Argo SRV is a tugboat that operates on vehicle tractor beams. So it's not dropping until that happens. Downstream teams aren't in. It's been a 45-week sprint. It looks like it's pretty far along, but it's still waiting on that tech. So they'll have to get the UI teams in to kind of figure out what they want the tractor beam, like the big tractor beam, industrial vehicle tractor beam UI to look like. And once they have that, we should get this pretty quick. Good thing with that is when the Argo SRV drops, tractor beams on things like the 315P, the C1 Spirit has a tractor beam. Caterpillar has a tractor beam. I want to say there was like 1 or 2 other ships there in the verse right now. The Cutlass Black is supposed to have a tractor beam. So there's a lot of ships out there that will make use of tractor beams. And I think that we're not going to be getting those tractor beams until we get the later tier of cargo moving. when we get the big box. I think it's a 4 SCU box. It's basically like the cargo container that you'd see on a ship nowadays, sort of the big, long rectangle version. Once we have all of that, expect the Argo SRV to come in. And when you have to physically, essentially what will happen, I'll get to this in a bit down the freight elevator. When you buy something at a station or a location, there will be a freight elevator and all of your goods will come up on that where your ship is parked. And then you'll have to move stuff onto your ship. Or alternatively, they haven't said this, but I'm assuming this is the way they'll work, is you can pay. You can basically say, I'll load it myself and save the 10,000 space bucks. Or you can say, just go ahead and load it for me. I'll pay for it because I'm going to make so much profit on this run. I don't care. Or it's something like a whole sea that's so big, using the locals to load it would make more sense just from a logistics standpoint. But you can either do it yourself or you can basically lock down. You won't have access to your ship, kind of like, trying to think how they do it now. Like when you're reclaiming your ship now, your ship isn't in the hangar being built. It's basically on lockdown for however many minutes. That's what will happen with the next level of cargo. If you choose not to load it yourself, they're all like, yeah, don't come into the hangar. We're loading your ship, kind of a deal. And then when you get to your ship, it'll be magically loaded. I think that's what's coming. But anyway, Argo SRV, tractor beams, cargo refactor, all of those things will probably have to be in before the Argo SRV comes in. Artificial gravity. So one of the game loops that I think is coming in the next year, and you can sort of see this one's planned out to June, and I could have said earlier that that's a warning sign that anything that ends in June is probably actually going further. That's just how far they have that team locked down. The good thing about this is the narrative team and the EUPU team were working on this, and the EUPU team is the one that's currently working on it. So they're not just doing the design document now, they're actually building this. But one of the things I think we'll see in 2023 is engineering gameplay, which is big because right now in the verse, you pretty much have Marines and pilots and people that sit in turrets. So a multi-crew game experience, if you're sitting in the co-pilot seat, you're not really doing anything. I mean, you can kind of move the little dot around for the shields, but you're not really doing anything. When engineering gameplay comes in, that job will be critical. You will be the person keeping the ship alive in combat. You'll be the person fixing things as it goes. You'll basically be the Scotty. Asteroid facilities, things in space will start to become a lot more interesting. So asteroid facilities, I'm pretty sure this is a pyro asset, but don't be surprised once they drop this, they will almost certainly be dropping it into Stanton too, because we still have the last location in Stanton that we don't have yet is the Air and Halo gates. And they haven't given us a solid answer on if they're going to actually bring those in or if they're just going to dump the idea. We've seen their white box exploration of it and it looked amazing. So I really hope they keep them. But asteroid facilities, you could have a bunch of hidden pirate bases out in the Air and Halo in Stanton, and that would be amazing. You will certainly have them in Pyro. Just if you know where they are, you can go there and there. I hope they start doing it where not all locations are known and you have to have a certain reputation gate with a gang, and they'll be like, okay, well, here's all the different stations that we use that you can refuel at now that you have a good enough rep with us. Moving on down, atmospheric pressure damage. Again, this is one of those that they finished, but we haven't seen in the games. This was almost a 2-year sprint on atmospheric pressure damage. This is crush depth on ships. So going down into gas giants and stuff like that. could hurt your ship. We haven't seen it yet. In theory, we will. Maybe next year. Bam Merchantman, they put a pin in it. I know it says 100% here, 97 weeks. So I kind of get where John Crew is going on this. So you kind of think that CIG's year is probably about 40 weeks. So this thing was already pushing over 2 years. They had these teams in it, the EUVC team, vehicle concept team. They're just working on a gray box. I think they had, or vehicle content team, not concept. I think they had 2 people working on it, but we don't have shops in. We don't have NPC crews. We don't really have a Banu aesthetic picked out yet. The verse isn't really big enough to handle a ship that size, and the economy isn't set up to handle a ship that size. It barely handles caterpillars, and this thing holds, what, 4 times the cargo of a caterpillar? I think it's 3 times the cargo of a C2. So Bam Merchantman, really, really big. They put a pin in it. Sadly, for good reasons. Bombs. We should start seeing smaller bombs. So think size 5 bomb, size 1 bomb, size 2 bomb. We should start seeing the whole panoply of bomb sizes able to be carried by Gladius and Gladiators and Sabers. Pretty much anything you should be able to pull off missiles and run bombs instead, kind of like you can with modern fighters. They just wrapped this, I think about 2 weeks ago. The 315 up here, that's for size 10 bombs, things that are killed by the A10s, which, ask Morph, those work. But they've shown them off a couple times. I think a year and a half, 2 years back, they kind of showed what they were working on. One of the things they had was a ship would release, or a fighter, I think it was a Gladius actually, was kind of going through a roll, and it released a bomb, and it just kind of threw it off into space. And they're all laughing about that. So they need to nail in the physics, but I think that's kind of what they've been doing with it. Boreal Stalker. So this is basically the big Yeti on Microtech. They finished it a long time ago. So I think it was almost 2 years ago. No, a little over a year ago, but they finished it. And it might still have some work that needs to be done on it that's waiting on another team. But this is the character art and tech team. So the tech team is actually the part that does the animations and stuff like that. And I think they had another deliverable around here, which was sort of Fauna AI, which is essentially what this would use. But with the stress on the servers in theory coming off, we might actually start seeing critters. So right now in 318, if you've been jumping into the PTU, we have rock bug, but it's just a static form. It's basically just a ball that looks like a bug. It doesn't do anything. If you set it on the ground, it doesn't try to crawl off. So hopefully we start seeing those things moving around in the new year. We see the, the Oni crab. They have like a floater thing. When they first released Lorville, if you go back and you watch that sitcom, they had like this scene where the camera just kind of does a fly through Lorville, and you could sort of see all of these critters running around. I think the limiting factor on those has been the servers can barely handle the NPCs they have in the verse right now without them T-posing on chairs. So watching a critter out there, a Boreal Stalker, when they put it in the game, they want to actually be like the Wampa. They want to like attack people and be scary, not T-posing on a tree stump. So hopefully now we can see that. So moving on up. So bounty hunting version 2. I think again, this is going to be something that they're going to drop for Pyro, but this is another long promised game loop that's wrapping in theory pretty soon. And again, this one isn't June, this one's May. So they actually think that they'll be able to wrap this. That might be a 319 asset, kind of throw us a bone of, hey, here's a new game loop. I thought engineering might fall into that category, so we'll see with that. But this was a long sprint. This is a long time coming. Basically what this will be is this will be kind of putting the hunting and bounty hunting. Right now, you get the God marker over someone where I didn't know about this until I actually got a crime stat and I went to Korea to clear my name, and I got a really good hiding spot as my countdown was about to finish, and I was like, I heard somebody landing, so I hid really well, not realizing that that person got a marker right over my head. And so they just came around the corner and fired because they knew exactly where I was. That won't happen anymore. Basically what will happen is you'll say, Don Steeler committed a crime last seen around, let's say, some location on Yela. And then you'll go to that location on Yela and they won't be there anymore. And so you'll have the bounty and you'll be waiting. And then all of a sudden a ComSat around Hurston will be like, hey, we picked him up. He just flew by here. So you're going to jump over to Hurston and you'll just kind of keep getting closer and closer. So if you ever saw the old movie, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, there's a part where Butch Cassidy and Sundance are basically trying to get away from bounty hunters, and the bounty hunters are just closing the distance time after day after day after day after day, and they just kind of keep hunting them. And they'll set up diversions and stuff like that. A couple bounty hunters will kind of ride off, but the main bounty hunters are still after them. That's going to be the bounty hunter gameplay. I assume also what's going to be happening is there'll probably be a bigger bonus for taking someone alive, and that means we're going to start getting non-lethal weapons in the game. The first part of that is actually soft ship death. So now there's a 80% chance that a person in their ship will still be alive even if you destroy it. So you'll have to get on board that ship, take them alive, and you'll probably get 200% more payout or something, just pulling a number out of the hat. But is presumably there will be rewards for taking people alive over dead. Bounty Hunting Version 2 might have that. They haven't talked much about it, but I assume in the new year we're going to be hearing more about that one. Moving on down to building interiors. This is kind of a cool one. This will start hopefully really opening up the city. So right now the cities are mostly just set dressing and you're walking around a little tiny neighborhood, especially something like Area 18, which they've said they have to remake eventually anyway. Area 18 is just, or not Area 18, all of ArcCorp. Area 18 is the only place you can go on the whole of ArcCorp that actually has anything to do. All the rest of it is just rooftops where you land on a pad and you can get some cool screenshots, but there's nothing to do there. There's no shops. There's no CD underground or anything like that. Building interiors will hopefully open that up. I think we'll probably first see this with the rework of Lorville. They'll kind of roll it out with that, and then they'll kind of spread it out. They've said for a while that Area 18 is a beast and they'll need to tackle that one later. But hopefully one day we kind of get our Blade Runner experience on ArcCorp. Cargo system refactor, we're getting this kind of cargo. I'd say tier 1, tier 0 is what we got now, but the cargo system refactor just kind of brings in building blocks. Things will snap to the cargo grid now, as opposed to you just throw them into the back and they're all sitting loose. They'll actually lock down in place, which will kind of be important when ship power becomes important. But they just wrapped that. That's going to be tier 1. Tier 2 is actually like the whole sea, 4 SCU containers, freight elevators. We'll get to all of that. Cave archetypes. We're getting the sand caves in 318, but they have things like ice caves. I'm assuming they're going to have numerous other kinds of caves there. Let's see if they actually mention any in here. They don't, but like rock caves, sand caves, ice caves, probably lava caves, pretty much anything you can think of. There's going to be all these different kind of cave archetypes they're going to work on, kind of make it easier. Now I'm going to kind of scroll by this area, but I'll just kind of make the note. This is all the Squadron 42 chapters. They're all ending right around here. And this has sort of been the case for almost the entire year. They've been wrapping right around here. That's a good sign. And that's sort of why I think they're going to have a go, no go this month and sort of say, do we want to move to beta? And we might or might not hear if they do. I assume we probably wouldn't hear until the end of the year if they choose to go that route. But this is a good sign. And they might be like, no, we're not really ready. Let's roll it out until we're ready to go. And all of this might stretch out for another year until they get it there. Because Chris Roberts has made it 100% clear that he is not going to release Squadron 42 until he is sure it's ready. He saw what happened with Cyberpunk and other games they've released before they're ready, and they're just bug-filled messes and they become memes. And even No Man's Sky. People still talk about how crappy No Man's Sky is, and they fixed everything and it looks great. Same thing with Cyberpunk. You played Cyberpunk lately, it's pretty entertaining and nothing's broken in it. At least nothing too bad. Squadron 42 could be making a step this year. I kind of think it will be. It's also kind of a show me year for Squadron 42. Like, you guys have been working on this thing for 13 years, make it happen. Like, if it's a year or two out, that's fine. If it's 5 or 6 years out, that's a problem. Character creation. A lot of these next ones here, these are Squadron 42 assets. So the character creator and the character work are, and there's a couple others. They're made for Squadron 42, but we should see them in the verse eventually. We heard about hair tech, 4 or 5 years ago now, and we've never seen the new hair. We still have the Ace Ventura hair in the game right now, which was a placeholder 10 years ago. It's been in the game for a long time, and we've had the DNA faces for the last, I think, 2 years, 3 years. But it's like 6 or 7 different faces to choose from. You kind of migrate between them, but they've talked for a long time that they want to have like hundreds of faces that you can kind of go through. And we know there's content creators out there, like Ryan, Super Mac Brothers. His face was scanned at one of the SitCons, I think in 2017. So his head is actually sitting in a game file somewhere. We haven't seen any of that. New hair tech, where is it? I mean, it's kind of one of those things that the character creator is kind of needed help. Hopefully we see it pretty soon. I would love to see a new character creator drop with Pyro, maybe, because they're dropping a lot of clothes and personalizations. Maybe they can start pulling some of those artists off and letting them work on stuff like that. You can sort of see all the teams that were involved with character work here, that hopefully we get to see some of the results of this labor this year. Would be nice. That's not necessarily a show me thing. I can keep going with the Ace Ventura hair for another year, but it would be nice to be able to build something that doesn't look as weird as the current options. They're good, but I'm going to actually go on a tangent now, and I'll put a timestamp down below. So if you don't want to hear this, it's about character work and some of the things that CIG said that, as a former character artist myself, I don't agree with. So feel free to skip right now. Okay. So one of the things I have suggested before is characters at different heights, and CIG's response has been the metrics won't allow it. And I get what they're saying. I don't agree with it, because they have IK, which is inverse schematics, in the game right now. So what inverse schematics is let's say that I have this pen. So I reach out, I grab the pen, I can move the pen around with my hand. That's schematic. So that is, my hand is controlling the pen. But let's say that the pen is a joystick, and now this is in a set location on the ship. So it's sitting here on the ship. My hand has to go to that target And if my hand moves, it's moving the stick around, but the stick is staying stationary in the spot. So the stick is determining where my hand lands. So if my arm is really long, my arm's going to be kind of cranked up on it. If I'm really far away, I'm going to kind of be like this. I'm going to be dragged away. That's inverse kinematics. So the pin is actually controlling where everything else along the chain, basically the hand to the forearm to the upper arm to the shoulder to the body to the BIPO1, which is the pelvis, which is the center of all character animation. We have IK in the system now. If you ever stood on a rock or anything and one of your feet is higher, or if you notice how, if you'll be standing on a slope, how your feet will kind of be at an angle that matches the slope, that's inverse kinematics. So basically the slope is determining what angle your foot is setting at. That's inverse kinematics. So once you have inverse kinematics in a game like this, you can have heights within a set area. You can say, this is a target, this is a target, this is a target, this is a target. And the hand will link to that target as opposed to being a set motion capture animation where the hand hits a regular place. Because if I'm taller and my hand is supposed to hit here, here, and here, and I'm now taller, the bar may be here and my hand will just be grabbing air and I'll be climbing up in the air and it'll look bad. But if you have inverse schematic using targets, then it'll hit the target no matter where it is in the animation. So the actual location of the target will control where in the animation the hands will hit. So inverse schematics, in that sense, when they're talking metrics, they're talking, we have a cockpit where the chair is a set distance and we have a set animation where the character moves around, sits down in the chair, their legs are this far away, their hands are this far away, and all of that. My solution to that would be to connect the chair to the BIPO1 once they sit down, in the same way that you would control that situation in a car now. Yeah, you just move the chair back, or you move it forward. If the person's shorter or taller, you just move the chair until it hits the right location, that the hands aren't like this or like this, just straight out grabbing. Not a priority. I want to stress that this isn't something I want CIG to fix now, but I don't buy the line that's something that's impossible. Other games have characters of different heights, and it's not game breaking. Now, I think you do have to worry about things like what I call the hobbits and giants problem. Other games have had character customizations where people would make themselves as small as possible, because then your hitbox is shrinking. And when you have a small hitbox, you're harder to hit. And you can kind of balance that off with hit points. You can kind of have, if you're smaller, you can't carry as much. And if you're bigger, you don't move as fast. But you can carry more, you have more hit points, something like that. The variation in height, I think, is right now they have a variation in height between the female and the male player, which I think is roughly 5'5" and 5'10", if I had to guess. But the problem is that when you have, these are the two heights that this is the height the female model must be, this is the height the male model must be. And you look around the verse, and right now I'll cut to a scene where we're walking around the verse. So you can see that it sort of has an uncanny valley effect, that when you jump into the verse and you walk around, it doesn't quite feel real, because everybody is the exact same build and the exact same height. They may have different faces, but they look like clones. So real quick, I'm going to jump into Cyberpunk and just walk around the street for a little bit and just see what kind of impact this has when you have people of different shapes, different sizes, different walking modes, and different animations moving around. It suddenly starts to feel a lot more lived in and a lot more real. And that's what I mean. So now I'll bring it back. So character work. And that's kind of the end of my rant, that I just wanted to say that is something that I think CIG could do that would markedly improve it. And I'll finish by saying it's a solution that they'll have to come up with eventually anyway, because this game doesn't just have humans in it. It has Tavarin, which are taller than humans and much thinner. It has Banu, which are much taller than humans. It has Xian, which are much smaller and much thicker than humans. And it has the Vandul, which are gigantic. So if they're going to solve those metrics, or they're going to have to solve those metrics eventually anyway. So end of metric rants right there. Welcome back. Okay. So charge drain right here will be really big for engineering gameplay. Probably for medical gameplay, pretty much any of those little energy guns and stuff like that, you're going to have to be slapping in batteries all the time. So you're, as opposed to bringing like 20 clips of, or not clips, mags of like C54 ammo or S71 ammo or whatever gun you prefer, you might have like one or two of those spots just for your battery, for your multi-tool. Could be cool. And that can make a difference for the engineers because they'll be running around using that tool to fix things and move things. Big deal. And you'll have to be able to charge those. I'm assuming they're going to have charge stations on ships. Kind of cool. All right, let's pop on down. Crusader Spirit. We should be seeing this one probably at the end of this year, I would assume. Again, they only have it through June. It's going to be like a sitcom asset, if I had to guess. The real question is, which spirits are we going to get? Are we just going to get the C2, which is just the cargo version? It would make sense to drop that one at the same time you drop the SRV, because then you'd have the tractor beam too. But if they don't just drop the C2, if they drop the A2 and the, oh wait, is it the A1? Trying to remember what these are. I think it's C1, A2, or A1. Anyway, E1. Whatever they are. You got the bomber and you've got the passenger ship. The bomber would bring in size 5 bombs, so you get to use the bombs from earlier. And the passenger version would bring in the Mixmaster, which is what you need for the Genesis Starliner. You also need the E1, I'm pretty sure it's 1. You'd also need the E1 as the first proof of concept for the passenger game loop. So all of a sudden, all of those ships that are touring ships, like the 890 Jump and the Phoenix, trying to think what other kind of ships we have in that range. Not many right now, but the Genesis Starliner is another one, which is Jared's, Disco's ship is the Genesis Starliner, ferrying people around. And as opposed to moving cargo, you'd be moving people. They'd come in, they'd sit on your ship, you'd fly them from A to B. And the kind of experience that you give them while you're flying them from A to B would make a difference. One thing that I think is going to change there is flight times in between places. I think quantum times might start stretching out. I think quantum distances might shrink with the various ships. So you won't have an Aurora that can jump a quarter of the way across Stanton. It might be limited to just around Crusader, because eventually they're going to have ships like the Kraken and the, oh man, what's its name? The pocket carrier. Anyway, you're going to have ships that'll move the smaller ships around to give them purpose. So right now it might be one of those situations where, yeah, you can jump across the whole system. You're fine. Or, you know, you can make it across all of Stanton in 4 jumps. Might not be the case forever. They haven't said anything about that, but it's possible. And one of the reasons they might do that is to give the longer range ships and the ships like the Spirit E1 a purpose. So now, if you want to go to the other side of the system, you might take a Genesis Starliner over there as opposed to trying to go in your Aurora across the entire system. And systems like Pyro are ginormous, and you would have a much harder time getting across them. Cutting tier 2. We've kind of seen examples of this in some of their vertical slices. This uses the multi-tool on certain points of interest where you could kind of cut open grates and stuff like that to kind of give you access or open up new game loops. It'll probably be important for engineering gameplay. Should be coming pretty soon. I mean, it looks like this is something that'll wrap around mid-year. Again, is that something that's actually wrapping around mid-year? We won't know for another couple weeks until they drop the new their new planning sessions, which they have all their planning sessions in January. And then we typically figure out we find out what's going on in February. So in February, we'll have a much clearer picture of what the new year is going to be focusing on. Cybernetics concepts. We saw all these concepts, but we haven't actually seen cybernetics in the game outside of Rochio, whoever it was, the lady, the fellow ginger that was at Levski, had a cybernetic arm, a cybernetic leg. Other than that, we haven't seen anyone with cybernetics. We haven't seen anything with the medical gameplay that requires cybernetics. So it's not like you've respawned 20 times and you've been shot gravely in your arm. Now your arms are placed with cybernetics. We haven't seen that yet. So that'll probably be medical tier 2 or 3. But anyway, hopefully one day we start seeing the fruits of those labors. Again, that one's not too pressing. It'd just kind of be cool to see some variation in the characters. See people walking around with peg legs and stuff. And I'll kind of, while I'm kind of glancing down the way here, hopefully I'll remember to put up a quick picture of the cybernetics. Delivery missions timed. We see a little bit with the Zeta Protonide or Prolonide, where you have to, you pick it up and you have to deliver it within a set amount of time before it, before the locking mechanism gives up on it and it basically becomes useless. So, or worthless. They've got time missions like that. It's possible we'll start getting missions like, hey, I need you to go and grab this box and it needs to be here in 20 minutes. Go. And you're going to do that. It's going to be like Smoking the Bandit. Southbound and down. Or eastbound and down? Oh, did I screw that up? It's eastbound and down. Wow. I'll never be a trekker now. Derelict spaceships, points of interest. They've wrapped this one, but there's going to be, they're going to keep going with this. Right now they have the Caterpillar, the Freelancer, I want to say the Cutlass, Mercury Star Runner 600i just dropped, Reclaimer. But that is 6 ships out of like the 50 or so we have in the verse. They're going to do all of those as derelict spaceships, and some of them you're going to be able to salvage, and some I'm assuming you won't. Moving on down, disarray ammunition. So this is, I think, yeah, this one damages the target, but it also disrupts power systems, which is kind of cool. Look around. That one's starting work in a couple weeks, so we should start getting different kinds of weapons, and distortion propagation kind of reaffirms that we're kind of, they're going to take another look at distortion, which kind of expect this to drop at the same time as bounty hunting, and I expect bounty hunting to drop with pyro. It could be a 319 asset. I'd be very surprised. This sort of seems like pyro and bounty hunting would go together very well. Like a bounty hunter would kind of need to sneak into pyro and kind of do the Boba Fett thing and just kind of silently move through a system until they found their target and then take them out. Distortion propagation, distortion weapons, big part of that. Big thing for piracy too. DNA head textures. In theory, this dropped in 3.17. We did get a bunch of little tweaks to DNA. They just made the faces a little more realistic. DNA toolbox updates. Again, kind of goes back to my character creator. I'd love to see a character creator where we can get variation, a lot more variation in faces, body types, height and weight, hair. I kind of want to see that. It not the biggest, most important thing in the game, but it would be nice to see that in the game. Docking ship to ship. This is something that only the audio team has worked on. So until the vehicle feature team comes on board, don't hold your breath. That one's coming eventually. Once that's in, should be interesting days. Doors, airlocks, light panels, UI. So this is again kind of moving things over to building blocks. A lot more things should start moving over to building blocks in the new year, like the Mobi-Glass, all of the pretty much all of the kiosks. We should start getting new types of kiosks. We know that they've got various kiosks around the verse that we haven't really seen them in use yet. Like we know there's a banking one that we've never seen in use. We know there's certain apps that they've kind of planned and we've never seen. But hopefully we start seeing some of those in the new year. I'm kind of seeing 2023 should be a good UI year, if nothing else. Dynamic environment was one that they finished a 3-week sprint on a while ago, I believe. Yeah, back here in 2021, early in 2021, which we kind of see that with the storms, but I would expect that to be iterated on. Let's see. Updating the emergency outposts as proof of concept for the new dynamic interior environments. This includes allowing players to use multi-tool tractor beams thanks to the addition of interactable props and consumables. So they actually already did that. So never mind. It's basically just things that you can move around with your multi-tool, which we have. Good job. They released it back in 2021. I thought that was actually something different. Dynamic events. So things like Jump Down, Xeno Threat, Ninetales Lockdown, that should all keep going in the new year. They'll come up with new ones, put them out there. Just given the amount of time that they're working on this, what I'd love to see is a version of Xeno Threat that takes place in Pyro with a larger player count, where you can either work with the UEE. Sort of said, okay, you know something, they're sending in Idrises, like multiple Idrises to attack a UEE system. That's enough of that. We're going in. And then you can kind of join the fleet, go in and fight Xeno Threat on their own turf and try and knock them in the teeth. Or you could be on the flip side of that in Pyro, fighting with Xeno Threat to repel the UE invaders, both players and NPCs. Would be very cool. Dynamic event. So it would hit a certain point where it would kind of be like, this has hit the boiling point. We're invading Pyro. Something to think about. Entities Properties plugin just wrapped. We aren't seeing this one in 3.18, I don't believe. So this is improving entity property handling to easily adjust properties for multiple entities at the same time. This is basically a back-end tool that allows them to change a bunch of entities properties at the same time. So everything with tag X will have this modifier applied to it. You can do that now. So we want every gun that shoots a physical bullet to have this kind of armor penetration. Now you can just type that in and it does it to all the entities that have physical bullets. Kind of a cool backdoor thing. EVA Tier 2. This is another one of those that I thought they might be able to sneak into 3.18, but they've got some more work to do. It does look like they're wrapping now, so 3.19, which we'll see probably in March of next year, March to June, I would guess. Which again, we should know much better in a few weeks. About February, we should know what 3.19 is going to be. But EVA tier 2, they've showed this off. It looks awesome. EVA is something that's needed a lot of work for a long time. Female player head, just more character customization. Just want to call that out. Fire hazard and fire extinguisher. This is one that I thought that they might try to sneak into 318, is just have stuff that bursts into flames. You'd be like, oh crap. And all of a sudden that fire extinguisher that's been wall decoration in your ship for however many years is now usable, and they just didn't tell you. Didn't happen. But they've wrapped both of these. I am guessing there's probably a bit more work that needs to be done on the fire, but fire will be a big, big part of the engineering game loop. So again, 2023 could be when we get that true multi-crew engineering game loop. And this is the kind of stuff the engineer will be doing, is putting out fires. Oh no, your component melted down. Are you going to fix it? Are you going to pull it, put in a replacement? Are you going to somehow reroute the power so that it can do without that component or the capacitor? Cool stuff. Fire Rat's armor, Gang and Pyro. I think this is just concept art. No, that's character art. So they actually made it. So once we get to Pyro, we should see what they look like. Black ammunition. This is kind of cool because this means that for certain guns, maybe you can actually choose, as opposed to having like an offensive weapon, like the C388, whatever it is, like the physical cannon that ships can carry. You might be able to use a different kind of ammunition that's flak ammunition that's defensive. So it just puts out like this big puff of shrapnel that makes it really dangerous for other ships to fly through, or it destroys torpedoes that are coming in, stuff like that. So you can make a choice between defensive or offensive, or maybe you'll be able to switch on the fly. Maybe we see that next year. We'll find out. Foliage shader. Basically just they're always making improvements on the planet tech and what these planets look like. So I'm really looking forward to the new year, because the planets in Star Citizen are mind-blowing. I mean, go play pretty much any other game from the last 5 years and just look at the ground, and then go into Star Citizen and just look at the ground. They've got some top tier level designers and some top tier asset designers for those levels and for the worlds. FPS devices deployables. This was just concept art. But maybe next year we'll actually see those deployables. They've been talking about them for years, like physical shields that you could put down in front of you that kind of act like a barrier that you can shoot around. So you pull out like a little bar and you plop it down, it goes and makes a force field or something. And that is the exact sound they will make. That was the sound they're going to use. They're going to record that and put that in the game. They're not going to put that in the game. FPS devices will obviously be getting more FPS devices, but I just think that's a cool one. FPS radar and scanning. So again, this was another one that I was thinking that they might be able to sneak it into 318. They did not. We saw an example of it at SitCon where you can actually ping around your area while you're walking in first person, and it'll tell you, okay, there's like 5 or 6 people over here. This is a point of interest that you can interact at, and this is what it is. There's a point of interest over here that you can interact with, and this is what you can do with it. The downside being that if you're in an enemy location, you ping, other people are going to pick that up almost like a sonar ping. They're going to be like, whoa, somebody just pinged me. There's somebody else here. Get ready. And, everybody will pull out their guns. So it's a little bit risky, but if you're a cargo mover or something like that, probably do it a lot more. Freight elevators is one of the ones I've been talking about. Sprint wraps pretty soon. That is 100% necessary for what I call tier 2 cargo. Who knows what its actual designation is, but freight elevators are things that are going to carry down all the cargo that you bought on a station, or you're going to have to unload things from your ship onto the freight elevator and hit the button, and then it'll go up, and now you can sell that stuff. Big deal. Big deal. Frontier clothing, just basically we're going to start getting more variations in clothing, especially when Pyro drops. I don't think we'll see this before Pyro, but we might. Keep an eye out when 319 drops and see what people are wearing. Maybe they'll have new clothing that's a little less corporate than Stanton generates. Let's see. So this is more DNA files, and this one just stops. So let's see. This is game dev integration of skin and DNA files with addition of level of detail, optimization, and fixes. So this is one of those things that I've been thinking might be a stopping point on getting new heads and new body types and all of that, is they might not have the LODs, the level of details in there. And that could be stalling it out. Maybe this is the piece of tech that kind of breaks that logjam. I have to find out. Gen 12 render, big deal. It sort of allows them to do Vulkan integration. Should allow them to stuff more stuff into the game, visualize. Generic screens, UI. This is something they finished a long time ago, and we have in the game now, but expect more of that now that they're kind of integrating building blocks more and more and more. The Gray Cat Sidnus mining drone, droid. I am hoping we see this in the verse, because they finished it a while ago, a few months back. This thing is cool. It's the spider miner, or the tick. It's a big walking miner that you can actually sit in and control if you want to, but I think it's one of the reasons they call it a droid is because you can use it remote control. It would be really cool to see these in the verse, like if you're flying around the air in Halo and you see a mining operation operating on it, or in Pyro, would be really neat. But it might be one of those assets that we only get in Squadron 42, but fingers crossed. Gray Cat Industrial Salvage Backpack. We have not seen this yet, I don't think. But we could be seeing this in the new year. And there's a couple of these things that are industrial sized, which I'll see if I can find a picture of it and put it up here. But we've actually seen these tools before on people's back, and they're huge. I mean, they're not just rifle sized, think like bazooka sized. And these things are made for moving the big crates around or ripping apart the big ship. I wouldn't be surprised if the Gray Cat Industrial Salvage tool could actually cut ships with their shields down and cut off chunks, like cut off a wing or anything like that. The Industrial Tractor tool should be able to move, I would hope, the 4 SCU boxes, or what CIG might do is when this one is in, they'll have it that the Industrial Tractor tool can move 1 SCU boxes, and the little hand tool can just use the handheld boxes, which I think is the 0.1 SCU boxes. I think they're 10% of the size, little hand carry boxes. So it might be that you won't be able to move big things around with your little hand tool anymore, at least not without burning a ton of battery energy. Gray Cat BTV. We have not seen the Gray Cat PTV rework in the game, but this is just vehicle concept art here. We have seen pictures of it when they were talking about the Gray Cat Steve, which is the next one down here. They were talking about the RTV, which was a kind of a Jeep, and the Gray Cat. And we kind of saw an image of what they wanted it to look like. We haven't seen him in the game yet. Steve, we've seen in the game. That one's at the game right now. Hacking Tier 0. They wrapped this about a month back and not in the game yet. But again, this would kind of go along with bounty hunting, engineering gameplay, piracy game loops, looting, all of that. The hacking, this kind of went from like a cute little sort of side quest thing that you could do. They've practically turned this into its own game loop. Like, you might be able to be your group's hacker that gets onto ships and unlocks the systems, or gets into the secure facility for your team. You'd basically be the decker if you've ever played Shadowrun. Hacking could be a big deal. It could be a really, really big deal. And this is just tier 0. We haven't seen it yet. Maybe 319. Fingers crossed for 319, because it would be cool to get like an interesting game loop like that just completely changes the game. Like, now you can lock your ship and you can kind of put a code on there, but these guys might be able to break it. Head rigging, more character stuff. They finished this a while back, but this is mostly for Squadron 42. We should start seeing some of these things come into the verse soon, I would hope. Like I said, show me your character creation isn't the biggest deal, but it is a deal. So around the end of the year last year, or at the start of 2022, I guess, they put in healing tier 0. I would expect to see healing tier 1 hopefully sometime this year. If they bring the Apollo back onto the roadmap, we'll know that they're going to try to bust out healing tier 1. And healing tier 1, I assume, would have things like broken bones that you can only heal in like a tier 2 bed. Like, the tier of the bed will actually matter. And right now it kind of does, but it's not quite as debilitating as it should be. But I have a feeling healing tier 1 would probably start coming with things like surgery and cybernetics, and you didn't die this time, but that arm is never going to work again. We had to take it off. Here's your cyber arm. Enjoy. You've got a hook. Hex, this is another tool. So let's see. This is feature set to enable player relations and developers to view and manipulate real-time data from all microservices in the mesh. So that's actually kind of cool. We haven't seen that one in action either, and we don't really know what it is. They haven't really talked about Hex. Hopefully we hear about that more in the new year, especially now that it's wrapped. Incendiary ammunition, I think. This one hasn't been worked on yet. This one's, coming in around the end of their planned features. We should start getting some cool weapons. It would make sense that the fire rats would use something like this, so I wouldn't expect incendiary ammunition to drop until Pyro. Just for that reason, it would kind of have nice synergy with the name Pyro. But yeah, incendiary ammunition, different types of ammunition, so it won't just be bullets and lasers anymore. Jump points, space escaping, and jump points, both of these are they're key to Pyro, so Pyro won't be dropping until both of these are done. Jump point space escaping was done a while back. Doesn't mean they won't jump in and kind of polish it. They've got some time. Again, this one's wrapping around June, so probably going to go a little bit further. They're probably going to work on this up until probably I'd guess probably a month before they release Pyro, just because why not? This is going to be our first time going through jump points. They want it to be mind-blowing. Ladders, in theory, just dropped, or just wrapped, but it's not in the game yet, so probably 319. A lot like there's crawling tier 1 that's coming. I think it's in here somewhere, or prone. I think it's prone tier 1 is coming too, but you're going to have a lot more control on ladders in the new year, and that should be 319. It looked like they mostly had it working during the SitCon presentation. Laser trip mines, they're in the game, but they're in the game as, I'd say, NPC assets. You can't actually buy a laser mine and set it up somewhere. you can only go to a location where they're already set up, and then your only option is to blow them up. Expect this to become a weapon that we can actually use at some point. They'll need to be a little bit careful because things like, I don't know if you played Half-Life, the original one back in the day, but you could make a level absolute hell with laser trip mines. So will they implement them? I don't know if they'll ever implement them that way. It would make sense that they would, that if they're out there in the verse and people are using them, they gotta make them and sell them somewhere. So there you go. Lean over cover. So this is one that I've mentioned a couple times, that I was, especially in bunkers, when you see the NPCs come up, you'll kind of see them blind fire over boxes or lean over the boxes. So this is in the game now. We as players just can't do it yet. And this says implement the tech and animations needed to allow characters and NPCs to push into cover objects, as well as to look, lean, and shoot over them. Right now, NPCs can do it, but we can't. So at some point, hopefully this year, we get the ability where when you're pushing against cover and you pull the trigger, as opposed to like shooting the box in front of you, your guy will actually shoot over it. Who knows? Fingers crossed. Hopefully in the new year. Again, not game breaking, but it would be cool to see. Life support tier 0. Big one for engineering gameplay. Again, wrapping in June, so we don't know if it's actually wrapping in June. 114 weeks. They've been working on this one for pushing into 3 years. So life support is a huge, huge, huge deal. This is the room tech they've been talking about for ages, and it looks like they're finally zeroing in on how it's going to work. Lockable containers. This will go along with hacking, I would assume. So you'll come up on a box with a code on it, and somewhere in the area there'll be someone that'll have like a tablet with what the code is, or a piece of paper that has the code on it, and you'll be able to break it that way. But you might be able to just hack your way in. And I mentioned it on the Drake Cutter, I think has it, and I think the Drake Corsair had like on the door panel button to get into the ship, there's also a little sort of access port next to it. And I think that's how you'll be able to hack into things. So even ships won't be lockable anymore. Lorville Seascape. Saw this one at SitCon. Probably has more time to go here. There's 65 weeks. So, I mean, that's over a year of dev time. But this combined with the building interiors, that could be very cool. It would be kind of interesting if they could drop that for 319, kind of have that sort of be the big location draw for that particular patch, but we'll find out. Mag stripping and refill. This is one that wrapped back here in Q2 of 2021. We still don't have this. So what you'll be able to do with this is if you have a magazine with 4 rounds in it and a magazine with 7, you can strip the 4 rounds from this one and put it in the one with 7. And now you have an empty magazine that you can just kind of store. And you got one with, what did I say, 4 and 7, 11 rounds in it. And now you have one with 11 rounds. So you won't be shooting 4 times and going empty and then shooting 7 times. You and have to change out. You could sort of pre-game it and set it up and then, fill the other one. We haven't seen it in game. They wrapped it over a year ago. So hopefully we start seeing gameplay like that start coming in. Would make sense to kind of drop that with the engineering game loop. It's not really engineering, but it's kind of related to that fixing stuff and manipulating stuff and breaking stuff and making stuff. So this is one that I want to talk about. So the heavy RRS armor, I believe that is the Morozkov armor, which we've got the heavy version in the game. There's a light version out there, And the heavy version, the Morozkov armor, is like some of my favorite armor in the game. I cannot wait to see the light armor. I think that would be really, really cool. So 22 weeks. I just want to make sure, when did they do this? I think, wait for it. Yeah, so I mean, they finished the light before they finished the heavy, and we haven't seen it. I think one of the things that's waiting for is stealth gameplay to come in, because this light armor, let's see, a modular light armor set aimed for stealth specialization. So probably what that's waiting on is gameplay like the first person radar ping. This will actually be able to hide you from those pings. Would be my guess. So they're waiting for that gameplay to come in. And they're kind of waiting on the NPCs to actually be smart enough that if you're not stealthy and you're tromping around in your heavy armor, they're all going to be set up waiting for you to walk through that door because they heard you coming from a mile away. And if you're coming in light armor, they may not be aware. So there'll be advantages to those different kinds of armors. Mantle tier 2, we've kind of seen evidence of this. Like, I've noticed that mantling is a lot less frustrating than it used to be. So hopefully they keep improving on that. I don't know. I've heard that they brought on a couple devs that used to work for Assassin's Creed, and it would be really, really cool if we could get to the point where, as opposed to having large, obvious platforms that we could climb to, if you could actually kind of climb the rock wall. And maybe rope physics will be part of that. We'll get to that later. Map and radar system rework. Big quality of life improvements here. This will be huge for not only regular player. I mean, the map has needed work forever, so I don't even think I need to talk about that. But the radar system rework, scanning and stuff like that, you're supposed to be able to occlude your ship. So you fly your ship behind an asteroid or something, and the radar loses sight of you. It can't scan you anymore. So that should come with this new system. So hopefully 319, we see that big UI improvement would be huge. I mean, that'd be big for piracy too, of being able to hide your 10 ships behind an asteroid and wait for someone to come. Big deal. Or hide your escorts behind you so that you're flying up in one, and like a lone pirate comes up to attack you, and all of a sudden there's 6 Gladiuses they're dealing with because they couldn't see you because they're in the shadow of your ship. Kind of do that now. MFD rework, another thing that's needed a lot of work for a long time. This will bring it over to building blocks, so hopefully they fix that building blocks bug that people are having. Again, wrapping in June, so take it with a grain of salt, but kind of a big deal. That's a big deal. That's one that they've been working towards for a long time. Definitely something they need for Squadron 42. So don't expect that one to go on the back burner. Expect it to be fast tracked. Military multi-tool. This is a Squadron 42 asset. It would be cool to see it in the verse. We do have some military in the game, so it would be kind of cool to see what the difference is, but this is easily one that we won't see until Squadron 42 drops. Mystical Sea. This is one that I know they say they're finishing in February. They're not finishing in February. Downstream teams still have to jump back in, do some work. I'm sure UI teams need to do some work. It's probably waiting on a tractor beam that wasn't in the original specs, but it would make a lot of sense that the whole sea would have a tractor beam for those arms. But that's not coming until cargo tier 2 is in with the freight elevators and stuff like that. And the economy can handle a ship the size of the whole sea hauling around cargo. That will have actual cargo missions where, as opposed to rolling up to a station, walking in saying, okay, I want to buy 1,500 medical supplies, and I want to buy 1,300 stems, and I want to buy 5, whatever, you get the point. Laranite or whatever. companies will be like, hey, you have a whole sea. Could you haul 5,000 boxes of ours from point A to point B, and we'll pay you X amount. It'll probably be less because you're not putting any risk into it. You're basically just literally the vessel that's taking it from A to B. So they'll be like, hey, we'll pay you 10,000 for this. Whereas if you were to buy the stuff yourself, put it in your own ship, you take on all of the risk. You basically spend all of that money. You could make like 500K doing the same run. But this way, I've seen some people talk about cargo insurance. No, I don't think they should do cargo insurance. It should be risk reward. So if you fill up a whole sea with all stuff that you purchased with your own money and make that run, you should be able to reap all the reward from taking on that kind of risk. Whereas if you just run a mission for someone else, like move this box that it could be kitty litter or it could be pure gold, it doesn't matter. You're not the one that purchased it. You are just moving the ship. So they're paying you for fuel and space on your ship to move X volume from point A to point B. Whole sea will bring that, but we're not going to get the whole sea until we have that. So, whole sea owners, I own a whole D. Not going to be getting it anytime soon, I wouldn't think. Mobiglass rework. I was thinking this was going to make it into 318. It did not, because they wrapped this back in November. Again, 319 is kind of looking when they're going to do this kind of stuff. It's looking like it's going to be a really strong UI patch. So maybe they get MFDs, Mobiglass scanners, radar FPS scanning. They get that all in the game for 319, along with Lorville, maybe bounty hunting. The 319 could be a pretty amazing patch while we wait for 4.0 to drop. Hacking could be in there too. Mop and bucket. So I always like to talk about this one because it's one of those things where on the surface, they really didn't do justice to what it is with the name. So the description is enabling support for AI janitors to use multiple tools in either hand. Now that doesn't sound like a big deal, but think about an NPC being able to pick up something and utilize it in either hand. So they can come at things from different angles. They can do different things. That is a huge step for AI. And if you're wondering why it took 94 weeks, and that's just what they've got planned out to May, that is a big, big deal. That is more than just mopping a floor. That is a significant amount of AI work right there to get that working. Mounted guns. So this is one that they dropped on us back in 313, which was March of 2021, according to this, which around various house outposts, we just got like a chain gun sitting on a little platform. Can't really do anything with it, just sitting there. There's a lot of planned gameplay about that. Now I want you to think about that same outpost, except the NPCs can actually walk around outside and you're flying in. Not only are you dealing with the turrets, but now you're dealing with NPCs that are operating little handheld guns or little like man pack guns. So if you come rolling up on your little stealthy Nox or Dragonfly or whatever, they could be shooting at you. If you're trying to sneak up on foot, they could be shooting on you if they see you. So mounted guns, hopefully we see the utility that they were actually designed for. And they've been talking about them being in Squadron 42 and being really cool. They just haven't brought that gameplay over to the PU. Hopefully they start bringing it over to the PU so we can get a sense or get a taste. New interdiction scenarios. I've been talking about this one for a little while. Right now you kind of drop in and there's like a bounty hunter and a pirate going at it, or there's like a pirate caterpillar and 3 ships, or there's a shipwreck. I haven't seen the asteroid one for a while. It used to be that you get popped out and there'd be like this big asteroid and you'd be like, oh shit, and try to fly around it. I haven't seen that one for couple years, but that one was kind of cool because it's like, whoa, where did that thing come from? That one actually kind of makes sense, but these are new interdiction scenarios. I assume space mines will be part of that, and we'll get to that down below. I'll talk about that again. Again, wrapping in June, take with a grain of salt. This is one that they're never going to stop doing. They're always going to be coming up with new interdiction scenarios, just kind of things to keep you on your toes so that you don't say, well, I'm jumping from point A to point B. I guess I better leave the room and go make a sandwich or watch something on Netflix. You come back and all of a sudden your ship's been taken over and you're in slavery. Could be fun. New missions on Orison. We're getting this for 318. Should be kind of cool. They really, really need to expand, like, not just missions on Orison or on Crusader, but actually have more locations on Crusader, because right now we have Orison and there's apparently like a whale watching platform out there, but it would be cool to have different people. Like, you could have illicit locations on Crusader, people that have kind of sunk their way down into the clouds where they're hidden. Think about a jump down where you got to come in and land on a platform where people could actually shove you off the platform and you fall to the crush depth of Crusader. That would be cool. Or you're flying through dense clouds so you can't actually see what's coming at you. Could be very neat. Or you have ones where they're gas mining or something like that. It just sort of seems like there's a lot of potential for Crusader that they just haven't explored yet. That right now they just have Disney World, which is Orison, and a couple platforms, which is Ninetales inexplicably invading Disney World. So, new missions. Hopefully we get more. Hopefully we get more locations on Crusader, not just at Orison. New player experience. This is kind of a big one. This has always been a game with a really, really steep learning curve. I've even done like a welcome to the verse. This is how you buy a ship in a game pack kind of situation. So, yeah, there are some real barriers to getting into this game. Like, I don't think I have jumped into this game in the last 5 or 6 years where someone in chat for each session hasn't said, hey, I'm a new player. How do I turn my ship on or something like that? New player experience. They've started getting to the point where the game is solid enough that they need to start thinking about that. And they are, which is a good sign. NPC. So NPC character creation service, NPC schedule service, NPC tracker service. These are all big things, not only for things like bounty hunting, but for things like just making the NPC seem more lifelike. This works with subsumption, and just makes them feel more lifelike, which is huge. Nyx system and planet. So this is planetary content team, which is interesting. I thought that was concept team. Nyx is the system where Delamar is, which has Levski. We've had Levski in the verse before, and I believe at the time, and keep in mind most of the lore around this was written at a time when they didn't realize they were going to have planet tech. A lot like Pyro, all the plants were going to be uninhabitable. And then they saw Planet Tech and they're like, guys, we got like 9 plants in this system and we can use all of them. They kind of went, holy crap, we've got so much content we could put in there, as opposed to one landing zone that you have a cutscene that you fly down to. Nyx is kind of the same way. Originally, the only landing zone in Nyx was Levski. Now they might be able to make Nyx a bit more interesting. So, in the original concept for Delamar, it just had tons of asteroids. So you're basically flying down through asteroids as you come in on like this, basically this thing that's about the size of Ceres. So kind of micro moon. Think about a third the size of the moon, but it's just surrounded by asteroids. So not just a belt, but like the moon blew up at some point. And then we got the real thing, and it was like little blocks out in space, and you got the sphere you fly into. Those were early days of Planet Tech, though. So next system, I assume they're going to do something pretty neat with. Ocean shaders improvements. This is one, we got the first iteration in 3.10, which was 2020. But they're going to keep working on this, keep iterating on it. The water should get more and more engaging as time goes on, and we might even start getting things, I don't know, maybe something like Assassin's Creed Black Sails, where the waves will actually come in and react and do different things. Would be kind of cool. But right now, waves should be getting prettier and prettier. X1 is Origin Space Bike. They're going to start working on the actual bike itself pretty soon. And then next year in June, they're going to start working on the bike itself. This is one that's waiting on, I would think, the 600i rework, which hopefully we will see in the new year. We've seen the white box and the concept drawings for this. So hopefully we get the rework of the 600i. I love the 600i, but the interior is not awesome. And the new one looks amazing, so I can't wait until we get that. But my theory is they're going to release the X1 at the same time as they release the 600i. So this, big grain of salt. Heading on down. See, we're getting through this. It's only been 2 hours. Outlaw medical outfits, Outpost homestead, Outpost theme variants. I'm hoping, what I'm thinking they're going to do is release these with pyro, these sort of outposts. I would hope we see them in Stanton first, especially if we're not going to be seeing pyro till the end of the year. It's just the current outposts, just with their temporary shelters, they're not bad, but they haven't aged great, especially when you compare them to these outposts. And it would seem like, think about Hurston flying out and you land at a town where the NPCs are walking around kind of doing their own thing. That's not just a single mining operation with a couple buildings, or that aren't even buildings, they're just temporary structures, but a town sort of centered around mining that has its own little store that you can sell and buy things at, like a general store. Like not just the place where they sell mining goods and you can sell food to, that you can walk in and they've got like a 7-Eleven, like it's got armor and guns, like a real 7-Eleven. America. But yeah, hopefully we start seeing these outposts. Hopefully it teams up with the new NPCs. Hopefully the NPCs aren't acting as derpy. Fingers crossed, y'all. Like I said, this is a show me year, and the NPCs with PES coming in, I'm hitting the point where I expect the NPCs with that blocker removed to start acting a little bit more like what was promised. They're getting there in a lot of the other areas, but that's when the AI is just not performed like it's supposed to, and I know they know that. Persistent Habs, I want to say, is this one that was finished a while ago? Yeah, so this was finished back in October, November of last year, 2021. So this one, in theory, has been done for a while. We kind of have this, but only if you get back into the right server. It would be nice with persistent streaming that your hab is actually your hab now. That you are on floor 4, room 10 or whatever, or maybe it moves around, but every time you log into a hab, like you could just drop your gun on the floor, and the next time you log in, your gun is sitting on the floor there. Like, that's the dream. And once we get there, like you could actually buy your condo apartment or whatever, kind of like you do in Cyberpunk, and you can customize it to fit you. Like you could have a workbench or something like that. That's sort of what I'm looking for. So persistent habs is kind of the part of that, but they aren't truly persistent. I mean, how many times in a game session have you ever gone back to the hab that you spawned in? I know there's people like HC Vertigo that have kind of made memes out of it where they've just stuffed their hab with as much stuff as they could, um, just for funsies. But I can think of one time since I really started playing the game in 2015 that I've actually gone back to my hab. And it was mostly just to see if I could. So hopefully we get that. Persistent hangers, similar situation, except these will kind of be your home away from home. It makes sense in a game where the sort of center of attention is a spaceship. Persistent hangers would be a big deal. They'd be the kind of thing where you probably live out of your hangar. You do most of your work in the hangar when you're not flying around in your ship. Persistent streaming and server meshing. This is, in my opinion, the blocker for the game. And it's one they're going to be iterating on forever and ever. Again, says it's ending in June. It's not ending in June. They're going to be working on it for a couple years. But we should start seeing the benefits of it this year. And like I said, when I say there's a show me year, it's kind of like, okay, most of these teams have all wrapped their jobs. You are saying you are releasing PES in 3.18. When 3.18 drops for 3.19, for 4.0, we had better start seeing the benefits of this. We need to see bigger player counts. Things need to actually persist consistently. We need to see NPCs acting better because the servers can actually handle that load. Because they're streaming things in and out. They're focusing in and making things so performance should start improving because it's sort of saying, you're here and you're here, so I only need to render this little part. It doesn't matter if you went to this location over here, that's streamed out. So nobody's there. We don't need to think about it. Just these two locations and we're good. That's what I want to start seeing. Personal inventory. Inventory's up and running since, let's see, November of 2021. It actually isn't that long. It seems like it's been up longer, but the inventory UI it's cool, but it's one of those things where it's too fancy for what it needs to do. They could just do a paper doll and it would be fine. And yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to be getting like a little bit of a rework on the inventory eventually. We'll see. Physical damage and breakability. This is a big one for ships. Basically salvaging. You pretty much have to have this for the next tier of salvaging, which is ship munching. This is just the ability to break apart ships. So like wings will break off. You'll be able to break off the nose, sections of the ship, stuff like that. That's what that is. Physical quantum travel movement. I think this is the one we're obviously not getting in 3.18, probably 3.19 or 4.0. We should see the new master modes where you can fly at local speeds, you can fly at fast speeds, or you can actually quantum travel between a place. So this is part of that, I'm pretty sure. Physical and local inventory support. This is one that we got back in November of 2021. But again, inventory, something they need to actually work on and get going. Physicalized weapon handling. So this is one, let's see. Yeah, this is one that they're going to be working on pretty soon. So, character animations while interacting with and customizing FPS weapons. So right now what happens is you'll pull up your gun if you want to. If you don't do it in the inventory system, which I always just do it in the inventory system, but you can actually look at your gun and do customize, and it'll kind of scroll through all the different options you have on you for scopes and like silencers or suppressors or flash suppressors or whatever, lights or laser pointers, anything like that. With this, it'll actually be when you say, okay, I want to put the silencer on there, you'll see your other hand come on there and like screw the silencer on or put on the scope or whatever. So it'll actually physicalize it, which is kind of cool. One of the things I wish that was the ability to switch hands, which again, as someone that's done character animation before, is funny. Somebody on Reddit, big surprise, was telling me, no, that's impossible. They'd have to do like a whole mocap thing and it wouldn't be possible. Guys, no, that's not true. You can mirror the frames or mirror the key points, and all the animations you have with the right hand are now the left hand. The only thing you'd have to do is have an animation of switching the gun from one hand to the other. And that's not hard to do. Physics, rope simulation. This one is, in my brain, really cool. We'll see what they do with it. I assume it's going to be for exploration gameplay, kind of like I was saying, of like climbing cliffs. Say that 5 times fast. And things like that. I'm assuming it's not tying things down. Yeah, so it says here, or being able to move things. So if you don't have a tractor beam around, or if you're on a low-tech world, it might be an option there. So extend the simulation algorithm of ropes to support ropes interacting with pulleys and improve general stability to enable development of new gameplay mechanics. So we don't have any ropes at all, so improving gameplay would be any gameplay at this point, but hopefully we see it at some point. Player body, more character stuff that hopefully we start seeing what it looks like. But let's keep going. So player interactivity, this kind of goes along with the new player experience, and just kind of the general UI experience in the game. All of those are kind of a big deal. Player item shard transition. So this is a big one. Let me see. No, I think that this one's already done. Yeah, here it is. So it's back here. This is what I was talking about, that if I'm in my persistent tab and I drop my pistol on the floor, and then I log out of that game, right now that gun is gone. It's not going to be in that tab. It might be in the local inventory for that system, but probably not. I probably just lost it. But with item shard transition, what it'll do is it'll be like, okay, player A dropped this pistol at this location, saved. And then I log off. When I log back in, if I go to that location, it'll be like, okay, you're at location A. This is the item you had in there. Here you go. It's there. So it's the Chris's coffee cup example they always use. Is that? Hopefully we'll be able to start seeing examples of that. From what I've seen so far in 3.18, a lot of that is working. Player reflection. They finished this one back in July. We haven't seen it yet. It's reflections are one of those things that are extremely expensive rendering wise. And if you think about it, it has to render everything twice when you're doing a reflection. And not only that, so let's say that the server kind of has a cone like this, that server says, okay, this is what you can see. So I'm streaming out everything behind you. Now you're looking at a mirror and you can see not only this, but this cone behind you too. So it has to stream in everything behind you. And if that's a long distance, all of a sudden it's got like all this stuff. Hit my Cintiq there. It has to have all this stuff that has to re-render and keep in the game, and it fills up memory. So player reflection is one of those things that I'm sure they're waiting until the server is under less load. So when you see the NPCs acting less derpy and more like they're supposed to, fingers crossed about midway through this year, maybe we get player reflection soon after. Player machine physical interaction. So this is basically just, I believe this is just animations. Yeah, interacting with areas of your cockpit. So right now, if you look around your cockpit and you find like a switch in there and you flick the switch and you turn something on or off, it just happens. It's like you're using the force. Now what'll happen if you get into the Gladius and do its startup animation, your character will actually go through an animation sequence. They'll be flipping switches and leaning over and turning things on, dials and stuff like that. They actually turn it on. That's what they're talking about there. Doesn't look like it's a super long sprint, so I'm assuming what this will do, and this will go back to my little character rant I had earlier, is IK. It'll have those buttons will have targets, and they'll kind of have like a set animation like this, like flick the switch is this animation. And they say this button, which is sitting right here, flick the switch. And this is going to be the target. So if this button is up here, your hand will reach up and do that. If the button is down here, reach up and do that. It's an IK system. I'm thinking that's what this is. I could not imagine they're going to animate someone flicking switches for every single cockpit they have. And if they do, they're stupid and I've wasted my money on this game. They're not going to do that. It's going to be an IK system. So therefore, our characters can be taller, sure. Already gave that rant. I'm done with it. Probability, volume, encounter, density, refactor. That sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, but basically what that is quanta coming into effect. And essentially what it's doing is quanta determines that there was a trader in a whole sea that's coming through here and a pirate is attacking them. And then you fly through that area and it sort of says, okay, space is big. So what are the chances that you actually encounter that whole sea and that pirate? Let's give it a 20% chance. And then it rolls the dice. If it comes up 20, it's all like, they're right in front of you. What are you going to do? That's what that probability and volume is. Prone tier 1. So prone tier 1 kind of goes along with what I was talking about with ladders. It's just while you're down, you'll actually be able to look around and kind of roll and kind of hold your gun in different areas and stuff like that. You can kind of do it now to a certain effect, but it looks goofy. This will make it look less goofy. Wrapping pretty soon. So might get that in ladders and EVA in 3.19 would be pretty cool. Pyro space stations. Again, this is one of those that any of these pyro assets you can use as a marker of when 4.0 is dropping. They're all wrapping pretty soon. That doesn't mean that we're getting pyro pretty soon. I would assume they're going to go back and keep polishing these. I'm still expecting 4.0 to drop for SitCon next year, provided PES is working as intended. Quantum simulation. This is what Tony Z talked about in 2019. They've kind of got aspects of it working in the game, and I expect them to keep dropping in modes. Again, ends in June, so it's not really ending in June. They're going to keep iterating on it, but we should start seeing more and more quantum simulations come online, and that's going to be critical for that cargo tier 2 to come online. Like the whole sea needs quanta working before it can come in. Quantum travel experience, that's again, they're kind of getting themselves into the same trouble that the MCU has. Everything's named quantum, but this one is actually traveling through quantum space. So this is again the master mode with traveling long distance and quantum travel. That's what that is. So we've kind of seen a couple examples. Should be cool once it's in there. 319, maybe. Rare scanning and ping. This is one that we got back in 2021. We've got it in the game now, but there was a lot of things that were supposed to come with that we haven't really seen yet. So maybe we see that with the new radar system rework. But again, this is something that they just finished in August of 2021, and they're already doing the rework. As devs, they want to do that as little as possible because it's a waste of time. Even if you learn something really good from this, you'd rather do something that you can iterate on rather than something that you're all like, that was a good attempt. It's not what we're looking for. Rip it out. Let's put a new one in. That's not totally what's going on here. This was kind of we're still going to be pinging. We're still going to be doing scanning. Radar's just going to be working a little bit differently, and the information we get for it will be a little different. Rastar, this is going to make the devs' lives a lot easier. And one of the reasons I think we're going to start getting towns and maybe even small cities on some of the more populated planets is because of Rastar. So Rastar enables the devs to make a settlement pretty damn quickly, or even a single outpost, but really what it's going to enable them to do is make a settlement. So eventually we will be able to use this with the Pioneer to build things, but that's a long ways off. Pioneer hasn't even entered its concept phase yet, so long ways off. Recipe TDD. So this one had a little sprint back at the beginning of 2021. I think it was basically a 2-week sprint. But I would expect this one to make an appearance once they get Quana up and running. So this was, I think what recipes was a ship needs, like, let's say, aluminum, and it needs, let's say aluminum and gas is how you make a ship. So you're going to need quartz and you're going to need aluminum. And so you send out the request that, hey, we need aluminum and quartz to build this ship. So miners have to go out and mine it, traders have to trade it, and then they have to refine that, bring that into the station, and then that station can build that ship. And if any piece of that chain breaks, then that ship doesn't get built and those ships become more valuable. That was something Tony Z talked about back in, I think it was 2019, that was going to be the way that would work. That's not what this did, but I would expect to see that example slowly come online. So it won't be, Laranite won't just be a random value. It will be a value that's determined by demand. So how much Laranite is being mined and what does it produce? So what's the end commodity that Laranite is used to produce? And then everything along that Laranite chain will be affected by how much Laranite is in the system. Could be cool. That's what I'm hoping they do with the economy. If they don't, it'll be sad, but it's not a game breaker or a deal breaker for me. Refinery overlays, we've got those. Don't be surprised if tier 1 or 2 of those comes into effect. They almost have to, because we're going to start getting refinery ships pretty soon, within the next year or two. Refinery ships right here, they had like a 4-week sprint to kind of figure them out. And that was probably around the time that they dropped or figured out the Expanse, the Misk Expanse, which is the concept ship that is the refinery ship that kind of tags along with the Prospector. So those two, we're going to be getting the next iteration of those pretty soon. Resource management, huge deal for engineering gameplay. Again, it goes out to June, so grain of salt. But resource management is one of those that we could get in modules. So we could get one resource management for ships, and then resource management for outposts, and then resource management for like capital ships and estates or whatever. But resource management, really big deal for engineering gameplay and just gameplay in general. That'll be a big one. We probably won't get engineering gameplay until that's in the game. Retaliator Room OC swapping. So this was a 17-week sprint, and I like to bring this one up because people bring up modularity. This was busted out in June of 2021. So it has been finished for a long time, but if you've looked at the Retaliator lately, you'll notice that it is not modular, much to a lot of people's discontent. So why don't we have modularity yet? They're waiting on some tech. And kind of, I think it's object container streaming. So right now, the problem with modules is that it's basically a ship within a ship. And it has to be able to say, okay, all the items that are in this container, which is the module, go with the module. So if you pull this module out, everything that's in there, like the torpedoes for the Retaliator, right now the torpedoes for the Retaliator are attached to the ship. So they're attached to this larger container. And so if you pull out this module and you put in the cargo module, you end up with torpedoes in the cargo module because those torpedoes go with the ship, not the module. And so it's a matter of getting all of those links all the way down the chain to work. We'll see. RSI Galaxy, this concept art dropped. It doesn't look like they're working on it at any point this year. This would be a bigger ship, but RSI is something that the style guide is pretty well established. It's a human ship. It's around the size of the Carrack, so probably a 1 to 2 year sprint to actually finish the thing. Especially with the modules, depending on when you release those modules. Like you could release the cargo module pretty quickly, I'd think, because it's basically just empty space. But we'll see. We'll see. RSI Galaxy will be an interesting one. I don't expect to see it within the next year or even next 2 years. Maybe 2024. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw it in 2024. RSI Lynx. This is the executive version of the Ursa rover. Should be done pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if we got the RSI Lynx. There's no downstream teams in this, so probably if 319 is a June patch, I could see it being in there. Could also see them throwing us a bone and having that be have that being something that they drop for 4.0. Maybe. But there's no real reason to sit on it. It's a ground vehicle. It's a relatively small ground vehicle. So much beyond June, and you're taking too long to make it. In the same vein, another RSI ship, RSI Polaris, they're going to actually start making this bad boy, which one of my best friends, Night 55, his ship, and he also streams, by the way, so you should go check out his channel. He does some wild stuff with tech, so has an interesting stream where he runs two characters at the same time on you pretty much have to see it, night versus night. Anyway, I'll link him down below. RSI Polaris, they're going to start working on it. But anyway, his ship, my ship is the Banu Merchantman. His ship was the Polaris. And I was always like, that's so cool because your ship can protect my ship and we've got great synergy. And I kind of expanded on that idea. And that's kind of where the idea for the Carnival came from. But they stopped work on the Banu Merchantman and they're going to start work on the Polaris. Again, huge ship. It's going to take a year and a half to bust out. So think 70-week sprint. If they're just starting to work on it in March, the earliest you will see it is CitizenCon of, or IAE of 2024. Don't expect it before then unless they hire 500 ship making devs, which they're not going to. Salvage, vehicle munching. This is tier 1 of salvage. Again, finishing around June. We'll see. But that's the one where you're actually breaking the ship apart. So the big claw of the Reclaimer. That probably won't be something that the Vulture can do. I think the Vulture is going to pretty much be limited to tearing off the skin of ships, this tier 0 level. Vehicle munching, and there's almost certainly going to be a salvage ship in between the Vulture and the Reclaimer, which I'm assuming that's one of the ships of the unannounced is something in between those two. There's probably 2 ships in between because the Reclaimer is essentially a capital ship. You need one that's like mole sized and one that's probably somewhere between a mole and a reclaimer would be my guess. A large ship, something slightly smaller than the C2, caterpillar sized. But anyway, that one would probably be able to do vehicle munching. Vehicle munching is a cool one. It looks like they got most of the tech figured out for it, so should be smooth sailing for that one. Salvaging gameplay. This is kind of the big game loop we got this year, and it's going to be dropping in 3.18. Really fun. You can do it with a hand tool. You can do it with a vulture. You can actually finally use the reclaimer. They kind of balanced off the fact that you're not breaking up rocks anymore and trying to hoover up all the little rocks with the best stuff in it. You've actually got to get out of your seat or have a friend. Again, this is a massively multiplayer game. Bring your friends to move the box out of the way so they can create the next box and move it down. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. Looking forward to kind of playing it. I tried not to spoil that for myself, both in Ivocati and the PTU. Sandbox prison activities. So they're just trying to make prison more interesting. When I did my original prison write-up before they dropped this, I thought that they should have like different gangs operating in prison, and you could choose to work with either go solo, just keep your head down, do your time, because I would expect once the game is out, prison time, one of the reasons that they're putting new activities in is because they're going to start expanding prison gameplay. So the risk reward of being a criminal player will go up and up and up and up. So right now it's kind of like, oh damn, I've got to kill an hour. I'll just go make a sandwich. But when it's like 6 days, prison activities had better be really fun and engaging so that it's not just wasted time for you, or you can escape. Or you got options for it. And it kind of looks like that's where they're leaning now. But one of the things I was saying was that it would be kind of cool if they had various missions and connections that you could only get in prison. So, like if you go to prison, you make contact with the Nine Tails guy that's in there that runs the prison effectively. And then he gives you a contact out in the world now that you've kind of proven to yourself that, or you've proven to him, yeah, I'm a criminal. I got put in here for piracy. It's kind of like, hey, we could use someone like you. Go to this asteroid in the air in Halo, and there's your asteroid base. Possibilities. They've said nothing about that being in there. Just, I think that'd be cool. Satellites, points of interest. More points of interest are always good. Seated item handling. So now when you're riding in shotgun, in a Cyclone, you can literally ride shotgun and hold a gun. Or a tractor beam or something, but they're working on that. 20-week sprint, middle of May. That sounds about right. That's mostly actor feature team. I would not imagine that would be too hard to figure out. So if 3.19 is a June patch, maybe we get that in there too. So maybe 3.19 is just the patch where we can interact with our world a lot more. Security behavior, there's another NPC thing, and security network version 0 and version 1. This is basically just security of various areas and NPCs being able to react to you. With Derpy AI, we don't really have that. So hopefully, once the AI comes online, we actually see this really come into effect. And hacking gameplay, you might be able to shut off security systems. Security Post Korea, we're getting this one in this patch. You can both use it to spawn up confiscated goods, and you can use it to clear your name, which is kind of cool. Selling is something that we got in 3.17 way back at the beginning of the year. I guess it was in March. Oh yeah, that was 3.17 flat selling. So you can loot and you can sell things. Expect that to be expanded upon. Heading on down, sharp angular. I don't know why I checked that. That's one that we've had for a while. Shield capacitors, shield emitters. There's a couple others that are capacitors and in that range, that when engineering gameplay comes online, it'll start mattering. Not only because engineers will be able to run through and fix it, but people attacking your ship, if they know where to shoot, they can shut off aspects of your ship, like your shields, for the duration until you're able to fix it. So they can hit it with distortion weapons and overload your shields so your shields don't come back up. Or they can turn off your engines if they know where to hit to turn off that capacitor. Or they can turn off power to a certain section of your ship if they hit the right area. Just thought that kind of stuff is going to become a lot more important. And then your engineer will have to run and fix it before they board your ship and take advantage of that. Ship AI subcomponent targeting. That's just the NPCs being able to do the same thing. Ship CPU, super critical for engineering gameplay. We haven't seen it yet. They did wrap it 83-week sprint, so long sprint, almost 2 years. They wrapped that a couple months back. Again, this is one of those that is probably just it's just waiting for the rest of the engineering gameplay, so they're just going to drop all of that at once, as opposed to, here's the ship CPU. You can't do anything with it, but here it is. Shops and patrons, again, once Quana really comes online, that should come to life. You'll be able to see, you might be waiting in line in a shop because an NPC is ahead of you trying to buy something. Would be cool. Sliding, another quality of life thing that's coming, kind of falls into the same category as prone and ladder climbing. Solar burst is a little 3-week sprint, which was, I think, a while back. Yeah, that was back at the end of 2021. Pyro asset. Pyro is a flare star. One of the reasons it's called Pyro. So a flare star is calm most of the time, but then it has these huge coronal bursts. So it has like these huge flares. And you heard Jax actually talk about that in his little walkthrough.
It finally happened. I got hit with one of those famous pyro solar flares, and the cutter has frankly, well, not been herself. But by good fortune of the Banu god of backwaters, I found this marketplace.
And so solar bursts will actually disrupt your ship, according to that. So that could be kind of cool. Space mines, not only important for us, for ships like the Nautilus, it's possible that bombers might be able to carry mines in lieu of bombs. They haven't said that, but it's a possibility. But what I think it's going to be doing is, I think the new interdictions will possibly use space mines. I've been saying that for a while. The space whale is not a space mine, but they've had this done. This was a 21 week sprint where they actually built the thing, and they did this a long time ago. But we've just been waiting on it. I think what we're waiting on is the point where space whale AI wouldn't have a T-posing space whale standing on a cloud. Just, that would not be as interesting. They want these things majestic and incredible and soaring through the clouds of Crusader. We haven't seen that yet. Next year, with less load or more load coming off the servers, they might be able to start implementing things like this in the Boreal Stalker. Moving on down. Stanton fashion clothing. We haven't really seen this. I haven't noticed anything in 318 PTU. And I was kind of looking for it, so that might be a 319 thing. Star Wars, if I remember right, that's localization, so that's different languages for Star Citizen, so it's not just going to be English. They'll be able to have Chinese and, who knows, like a bunch of different languages, French, German, everything else. Subsumption editor integration, that's huge for the NPCs. So again, it kind of seems like they're realizing that their NPCs, that the shackles are going to kind of come off, so they better start locking down the background tools to be able to make them act like how they thought they were. Surrender. In theory, this dropped in 314, but We haven't really seen it in the verse. I think I haven't been interdicted by security too much. I wouldn't say I'm a lawful player, but I don't really go out of my way to get a crime stat. So I'm not sure if you can actually surrender and it works yet. That would be interesting. So if you know, let me know down in the comments. But I would expect for bounty hunting, again, that'll be vastly expanded upon. Like you'll be able to surrender to another player. You'll be able to tell another player to surrender. And they'll just be able to put their hands up and be like, yeah, okay, you got me. I don't have any weapons on me or out of ammo. It's clear you got me. So go ahead. Swimming tier 0 is coming up next year. So we're going to be getting a lot of water aspects coming up, which is neat. They say June. 14 weeks is pretty reasonable for swim ammunition or animation. Buoyancy might be tricky because armor could change your buoyancy. Oh, could be cool. Swimming. So again, that's another thing that if 319 drops around June, maybe they sneak swimming in there too. I don't know why I had takeoff landing. I could see them redoing the UI for landing. They've been talking about it for years, but they just haven't done it yet. Back in the old days, back in like 2015 or so, when you come into land, you'd actually get one of your screens would be a UI screen, and it would show the pad coming up, and then it would like flash when you were directly over it. So it wasn't this sort of, am I far enough in? Am I far enough in? Yeah, I think I'm far enough in. And then you land and the doors like close on your ship. Hopefully that UI they improve on. Third person camera. This is just another one that's coming next year, for all the camera people out there, myself included. I would hope one of the things that I've been saying for a while is I think for their drones, which are going to be a big part of the game, there's salvaging drones, there's mining drones, there's exploration drones, but there's also camera drones. We've actually seen camera drones in various cinematics through the years. And I've always said the camera drone is like a no-brainer. Just make that your first drone, because literally the only thing it is being able to look. Like that's all it does. It doesn't do anything. So you don't need any AI outside of an eyeball. And then you could even have little drones for FPS where, I mean, you could send a drone flying off through a thing, but you could have it that there's no more magical third person view anymore, that you have to have a camera drone in order to get third person. But in order to make that worthwhile or a worthwhile payoff for the player, you could have other aspects, like you could do aspect ratios and like zoom in and out or that sort of thing. Obviously you can fly around, so you have a little bit more direct control of the camera. Have it that a co-pilot or someone else could actually control the drone. I don't know. A lot of things you could do that with that. That's not what this is. This isn't a drone. This is literally the camera that we got right now that's made a little bit better and to do a little bit more cinematic things. Thruster capacitor, same thing. It's a capacitor. They say they dropped in 314. If they did, it didn't do much. I would expect them to come back and tackle it again. Or just the capacitors, in order for them to actually take effect, they need the whole CPU and the whole integrated resource management in effect, and it's not in yet. Time trial races, we're going to be getting more of them. 318, we're getting a few, and you win one race and it'll unlock another race location. You can go race there. So racers will finally have something to do, which is kind of cool. Tracking app is for bounty hunters. I think this one was done a while ago. Let's look. Yeah, this one was done in Q3 of last year. That one's going to be needed for bounty hunters. So that'll be the one where you've got a bounty for this guy. You call up the app. It says last seen here. You go to that location. He's not there. And then it says, ooh, we just saw him in Hurston. It'll show like a camera view of him walking around in Hurston. You're like, crap, he's in Hurston right now. Got to get going. So you fly to Hurston. You land at Lorville. You look around for him. Now the question is, are they going to start rolling back armistice zones? I assume they're going to do that once the AI is good enough that it can react to people trolling, because there will definitely be people who will just pull out a P4 and just start mowing down people in 318 because it's funny. And security has to be able to react to that immediately, or those little security scanners need to be able to say, dude, you can't bring your guns in here. you can keep them on your ship, that's fine, but you're not bringing your gun into this mall. Sorry. That'll probably be another thing that's coming. Again, just guesswork, but each of the customs locations has those scanners. It's going to be a thing. Utiliflex crossbow. So I want to talk about this one because this was actually a stretch goal. I think it might have been something that you could buy or back for or pledge for during the Kickstarter, but they finished it in theory, but I think it's kind of waiting for certain tech to come online, so it's not actually finished. But we haven't seen it in the game yet. Eventually we'll see the Utiliflex crossbow. Now we're down to kind of one of the fun ones, which is the unannounced things. We've got unannounced content here. This one I always like to talk about because, I mean, it's been done since June of 2021, whatever this content is. But look at all the characters they're doing that. They even had to pull in mocap people. So what the hell is it, and why isn't it in the game yet? I mean, you have vehicle content, you've got people, you got facial animation. So what is this thing? Finished in June of last year. You'd think that it's got to be waiting on some tech. Who knows? Unannounced vehicle content team working on it here. This isn't one of the ones we saw. 12-week sprint means that it's probably like a medium-sized ship, like freelancer-ish sized, would be my guess. 44 or 43 weeks for more content, again wrapped in actually just last month. Again, we don't know what it is. It is a landing zone, so it's probably a pyro asset, would be my guess. Or a type of pyro asset. Who knows? 11 weeks, unannounced content, same thing. You can kind of get a sense that it's something vehicle related. We don't know. Planet Tech team of 5 weeks. That one was finished a long time ago. 12 weeks, unannounced content. It's the LCA is location concept art, so they just drew it. So who knows, maybe a Banu location or something. Narrative team. I skip over the Squadron 42 ones just because the teams that are working on it are the UI tech team and stuff like that, so it doesn't really tell us what it is, and since it's Squadron 42 specific, it could be anything. This is the EU landing zone team. Finish something off, so again, probably a pyro asset. Unannounced tech. 23 weeks, pretty long sprint, so who knows? 2-week sprint. This is just concept vehicle, just narrative. So this one's just they haven't started drawing it. They just did a write-up that it's a vehicle that could do this, and since that's 2 weeks and it's just the write-up, it could be anything from a bike to the Death Star. We don't know. 2 weeks could be anything. 67 weeks. So this is the one that I was thinking was a good candidate for Invictus. Like have the Pegasus carrier or something like that, because 67 weeks is a hell of a long sprint for concept art. This is just a concept, took 67 weeks. The Odyssey, by comparison, which is bigger than the Carrack took 55 weeks. So whatever this is either alien from a manufacturer that we don't know, and it's enormous. Or it's enormous. So it's got to be a big ship. So if it's an alien ship, it's a big alien ship. If it's not an alien ship, it's a huge ship. So we all know what that is, something big. 37 weeks is a sizable amount of time for just concept art. So this one's a larger ship, would be my guess. Or again, it could be alien or a manufacturer. They don't really know. 15 weeks for an unannounced ship, medium-sized. Think freelancer. 20 weeks audio and VFX. So this one's been bugging me for months. Who knows? The only two things they have on it is audio and VFX. So there's no concept art. There's no narrative team. What kind of vehicle is just audio and VFX? I mean, I could see it being something like a parachute maybe, or maybe a shield that works like a parachute. No idea. 16 weeks, vehicle concept team. It's a medium ship. They're kind of focusing on freelancer size ships now, which isn't a bad thing. I think those are going to be the most common ships in the verse, just because most people are going to be playing solo to like 3 or 4 people. So a smaller ship like that makes the most sense. Maybe up to Cuddy or Connie, or Connie sized, Mercury Star Run or something like that. 28 weeks for a vehicle concept. That's moving from medium, large. 14 weeks unannounced, medium ship. 107 weeks. Oh, this is underground facilities. So this is one that we saw at SitCon. Looks awesome. I cannot wait to see these in the game. Unfortunately, we probably aren't getting them until Pyro, but I would love to see even just one underground facility like the one that we saw in SitCon. The catch is that they're quite a bit bigger than what we have now. So it's not just like a bunker that leads down to an open room with a couple hallways coming off of it. These things are expansive. They're huge. So they will be, and that reminded me, but I'll get to that in a second. They'll need good NPCs. They'll need missions made for them. They'll need bunches of asset packs. So we might not be getting these soon. They might surprise us, but I would assume that this is mostly a gray box or white box exploration here. And we would probably get them in 2024. It would be amazing if we got even one of those underground facilities for 2023 with the new NPCs where you can kind of do the hitman thing, dress up like one of the workers or a guard or something and sneak your way in and kind of keep doing that deeper and deeper into the facility. You can kind of see why I don't think that this is coming soon, because they would need a lot of other mechanics working before they could bring in the actual facility itself. So it might be one of those things that the facility itself is just a level. So they can do the level really quickly, and then it just kind of sits there because they don't have the underlying tech that would make it actually work. Hopefully that isn't the case, but expect to see it in 2024. 2023 would be amazing. Water rendering caustics. This is one that they finished. I think it's actually in the game, but we can't really do much under the water, so most people don't look at it. But I think water gameplay is going to become a bigger deal in the next year or two. So watch water effects as the year goes on. Unified item ports is one that they just wrapped. Don't think that's going to have an effect in 3.18. Should have an effect in 3.19. Vehicle names and serial numbers. Just wanted to point this one out. So this was May 5th of 2021 was when we got this on the Reclaimer, the 600i, the Mercury Star Runner, and I think that was it. The Corsair had you had the ability to name the Corsair on concept, but it didn't come out with that first wave. But a lot of people were pissed off about that because they kind of released it in waves, and people have kind of been dreaming about being able to name their ship X, Y, or Z for years. And just because they didn't win the naming the ship lottery, or they didn't spend $10,000 on the game, they didn't get to go first, and they had to name their ship Rockerbilly 469 420 lol boobs or whatever, and that's it. And that wasn't the name when really they wanted Star Goblin or something, and they couldn't get it. So they're thinking this one through, is my guess, or they just sort of said that pissed them off. Let's tackle that at some point in the future. We got bigger fish to fry. It was supposed to be something fun that we give to them. It didn't go over the way that was happening in our heads. We'll try again later. Put a pin in that. I'm guessing that's what happened because this is the vehicle feature team. Yeah. One of the ways I think CIG can make money is I think that they could sell different fonts. So you could have, you could size and have a different font. You are up in my grill. What's up, buddy? What have I been talking too long? I'm almost done. I know. My dog is really ticked at me. It's like, usually you do this for like 45 minutes to an hour. You've been going over almost 3. How about you not? So vehicle names, serial numbers. Yeah, I think that they could make some money by selling that. Vehicle tractor beams. You're not going to get the SRV until, you're not getting the SRV until this is done. And right now it's going till June. Vending machine utilization. We haven't been able to use the vending machines. This was wrapped a long time ago. May. Oh, actually not real long. May of this year. They did all of the mocap of it. They did the actor feature team on it. I've never seen an NPC acting with the vending machine. So hopefully in the new year, we actually get NPCs interacting with the world around them rather than just walking from point A to point B. Virtual AI service should have something to do with that. Should help. The volts, the different volt weapons. Let's see. We've got the SMG, I think this is just the assault rifle. Yeah, that's the assault rifle. This is the pistol. And that's an SMG. They have 2 SMGs. That's weird. Okay, I'm guessing one of those is actually an LMG, and they wrote down the wrong letter. I have no idea what's bigger between a Fresnel and a Quartz, so we'll just go with that. Could be seeing the volts in the new year. Weapon capacitors, again, capacitors should start seeing those actually matter a lot more when engineering comes in. Weapon handling tier 2, again, that's people being able to use their guns. I would love to be able to switch hands. Would be huge. Weapon misfire and wear, that kind of goes along with being able to weapon strip and all of that. The longer you have your gun, if you're not repairing it or fixing it, engineering gameplay. Again, to a certain extent, this is kind of that mechanic fixer kind of guy. They're going to start working on that. Again, June. Don't bet on it being in June. Xenothreat armor, that's going to be a 4.0 asset. GN cargo, but that's only for Squadron 42. They did do GN facial rigging, which I just wanted to mention because if they're already rigging GN facial, are we going to be getting, and this one is Squadron 42 and the PU, we might actually see GN in the verse, probably not next year, but soon, 2024. the verse is not a real diverse place right now outside of humans, so you would expect to start seeing aliens pretty soon. And then the last thing is 0G push pull that goes along with the EVA tier 2, which is coming. And gang, thanks for sitting through that monster of a deep dive. If you liked all this, if you have questions, comments, you think that I missed something in here, you think I'm wrong on something, let me know. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the new year. That's really kind of what I'm curious about, because everything that I just said in that 3 hours of chatting was basically just supposition. In February, they could come back and they could be like, we rethought this entire thing. We don't want any of this stuff in here. We're going to completely redo it. And this is what you're getting for $3.19 instead. They've done something like that before in the past. I don't think it'll happen this time just because they've been so laser focused on Pyro, but let me know what you think. And thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and see you next time.